Good evening, everybody. It is 6 o'clock on August 5th. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Somerville Planning Board. And pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting of the Somerville Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation. An audio recording of these proceedings will be available upon request to planning@somervillema.gov. This meeting is being recorded. I am Mike Capuano. I'm the chair of the planning board. With me tonight is Amelia Aboff, Rob Buchanan, Jahan Habib, Debbie Howard Easton, and Erin Chino. We've got a number of items on our agenda. The first is 73 Summer Street, and the second is 67 Broadway. I would ask the clerk of the planning board to please read into the record the notices of public hearing for both of those agenda items, please.
Sure. Notice of public hearing, 73 Summer Street, P&Z 20-003. First Summer 73 LLC proposes to construct a 3-story LEED Gold apartment building and establish a household living principal use in the MR3 zoning district. This proposal requires site plan approval and a special permit. 67 Broadway, Planning and Zoning 20-024, Revolutionary Clinics Incorporated proposes to modify a 3-story commercial building in the mid-rise 4 district, which requires site plan approval and to establish a cannabis retail sales use, which requires a special permit.
Thank you, Rob. And to clarify, there was a case during our last meeting that included language that they were trying to make themselves a cannabis location, and they weren't at all. It was a doggy daycare. And I was going to say that's one heck of a fun doggy daycare, right? So 73 Summer Street has submitted a written request to be continued to the August 19th meeting of the planning board. The chair moves to continue that case to August 19th, seconded by the clerk. Roll call vote. The chair votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
Erin votes aye.
Debbie, you're muted.
I see that now. I vote aye.
Okay. Unanimous vote to continue the Summer Street application to the 19th. We also have a matter of other business, which is the hiring consultants under General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53G. The chair moves to table the discussion of that to the August 19th meeting, seconded by Amelia. Roll call vote. The chair votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
Erin votes aye.
Debbie votes aye.
Thank you all. Unanimous vote. I would ask for the applicant for 67 Broadway to please be unmuted. And for whomever would like to share their screen, if you want to make the presentation, to have the opportunity to do that, please.
Mr. Chair, this is Rebecca speaking. I see that Attorney Ann Vigorito has raised her hand. She's now unmuted. And you're muted on your end. There you go.
Oh, thank you, Rebecca. Good morning. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm here this evening regarding Revolutionary Clinics, which is located at 67 Broadway, Somerville, Massachusetts. And as I stated, Ann Vigorito with my office address of 424 Broadway, Somerville. I do believe, just before I get into a brief presentation, Keith Cooper had forwarded the presentation to Charlotte, but he is also ready to share his screen. So whichever would please the board, we can proceed with just on that end.
This is Rebecca speaking again. I will make Keith a presenter.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rebecca. Just wanted to, I didn't want to have a glitch.
To the extent that there may be folks in the audience that have not seen that application, I would ask for the screen so that everybody can see what it is that we're talking about. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be very brief. So this is a proposal to modify a commercial building to establish a cannabis retail sales principal use in an MR4 zoning district. This requires a special permit for the use and site plan approval for the site, which will be 1,100 square feet and provides 4 long-term bicycle parking spaces as well as no short-term spaces. Ward 1 Councilor Matt McLaughlin is in support of this project. I spoke to him earlier this week and did confirm that. The proposal was reviewed by the Urban Design Committee on January 26th of 21, as well as February 23rd of 21. We had 2 neighborhood meetings for this matter. The first one was on January 5th of 2021, and that was at 6 o'clock in the evening. And the second occurred after we proceeded through the Urban Design Committee, and that was held on March 29th of 2021 at 6 p.m. Just a quick background, in March 2017, this applicant, Revolutionary Clinics, received a special permit from the Planning Board to establish a medical marijuana facility at this location, which is in the front portion of the building at 67 Broadway. And just to give it a landmark, it was previously housing the Boston Spine Clinics, just if anyone wasn't aware of that. I will introduce the team to you. Keith Cooper, who is the CEO of Revolutionary Clinics, is on this evening. We have Bruce Hampton, who is the architect, Steve Saragusa from Design Consultants. They performed all of the traffic studies. John Grennan, who's the Director of Security for Landtel Communications, as well as Sean Lewis, who's the project manager for Landtel Communications regarding all of our security. So with that, I would like to now hand this off to Keith Cooper, who will begin the presentation.
All right, so I'm unmuted. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, good, thank you. I can't see the people anymore because the screen is in front of everybody. So let me make it a little larger. Thank you so much for having us this evening. We look forward to progressing with our project, and we have been in this location now for almost 4 years, and before that in construction. So we've had a great experience in the neighborhood. The agenda for us tonight, pending your discussion, is a brief overview of our company, our community involvement and commitments in Somerville, and our plans for the property and the changes that are going to be made. We'll have a traffic and parking analysis, architectural and security plan review, and of course, for whatever questions remain for the council. We have already been in operation for now 45 months. At 67 Broadway. We've made significant investments in people in the property. We've had no notable incidents or violations in Somerville. Our host community fees are paid directly to the Somerville Department of Health and are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars now. We've created in the company over 360 jobs since I arrived 4 years ago in Massachusetts. 30 of those are in Somerville, and we have 9 Somerville residents who work for us. This new business of adult use cannabis will create approximately 20 new high-paying jobs at that location in Somerville. And for the medical side of the business, we give automatic discounts to veterans, seniors, and hardship clients. And importantly, we're going to remain a medical dispensary when adding adult use. Oftentimes when cities and towns approve adult use, lots of companies come in and want to open that because it is a larger, more lucrative business. We are committed to remaining a medical dispensary as well. Part of the team that the city will deal with, myself, I have a long history in Somerville. My grandparents grew up in Somerville. My parents were born in Somerville, both of them. They went to Somerville High School. That's where they met, and they got married. And I was born in Somerville. So I ended up growing up in Watertown, but know Somerville very well. Jessica, who is our VP of Retail and is in charge of this location, lives in Natick. We have Devin Hall, our VP of Compliance, who is local, Tom Schneider, who's our VP of Marketing. Very important to get people through the door and get that tax revenue flowing and fee revenue to the Somerville. And Gary is our head of community outreach in DE&I. So we have a great team. Our retail employees, we pay higher than the average for the industry and much higher for other jobs. We start at $19.35 an hour, and our retail employees are over 70% minority and female. This is a photo shoot for our retail leadership team in Cambridge and in Somerville. Those are our 3 stores, 2 in Cambridge and 1 in Somerville. So really great team that service our patients today and our customers very soon. I'll take you through briefly our community involvement and commitments. We take this very seriously. We have from top to bottom in the company people investing time, money, and cooperatively in the community and in equity in order to make this the best business possible and our communities the best places possible. We're active sponsors of East Somerville Main Streets. We have a community advisory board, which is fabulous in Somerville. 8 representatives from the community are represented on that board. And each year they select the nonprofits that will receive a donation from us. You can see the names of those organizations, the Welcome Project, Somerville Homeless Coalition, et cetera, that receive that money. We have committed to the Somerville CAS, which helps families in Somerville through the Head Start program with a $25,000 donation this year. We have give back days in our dispensary in Somerville, and we have something unique called the Rev Access Card, which people have that are customers of ours that give discounts at local restaurants like Vinnie's and Redbone. So getting involved in the business community as well as nonprofits and support organizations. We attend the Somerville Substance Abuse Prevention Program to brainstorm how to best use the tax dollars to prevent substance abuse. We produced as a company and donated over 200 gallons of hand sanitizer at our factory in Fitchburg and distributed that for free to organizations including Somerville Cambridge Elder Services in the height of the pandemic last year. And we run a program that we're really proud of called Street Certified, where we create discount medical cards for inner city citizens who would otherwise have trouble affording those cards. And it's a very successful program. We started the Aspire program, and this was meant to help people that had been disproportionately affected by the war on drugs get into this business successfully. Oftentimes people will have a priority and will get a license, but they don't necessarily have the experience to run a retail store or a cannabis business. It's very complicated, as you know, highly regulated and with lots of compliance and complexity. So we have a program where we help people both learn that as well as to assist them to get into business with some financial support. And in practice, we have helped 5 equity license holders to get into business or almost get into business. In Haverhill, in Uxbridge, and in Boston, we helped 3 groups fund and open their businesses. We also donated over $200,000 to 2 economic empowerment licensees in 2021 thus far. So a significant commitment to help equity get open in Cambridge and Somerville and in the state. We partnered in a complementary program with Leah Daniels, who's from Roxbury, who runs the Green Industry Funded Training Program. She came up with the concept. We helped her realize its goals and mission. We helped fund it, and we are the ones that do the mentoring and pay these people that need the experience in retail stores to come in and become basically mentors and mentees in our stores. So we have 4 people in that program right now, and I'm really proud of the outcome here. And Leah Daniels is a spectacular person that we work with. Our qualifications for running an adult use cannabis store, we've been successful and compliant in the medical business for over 3.5 years. We already serve over 150,000 customers per year. We know how to do this business. We have one of the largest and most efficient cannabis factories in the state. This is unique, already producing products sold in almost 2/3 of all the Massachusetts stores. That's a wholesale business. And that's really important because we have a supply of products for the Somerville adult use demand that some others do not have. And there's often supply and demand imbalances, which can affect revenue, tax, and fee dollars that come into cities and towns. We do a really good job at servicing our clients as reflected in our customer reviews and ratings. We have a diverse workforce, as I mentioned, a solid record of community giving, and we've shown that we can open and succeed quickly to maximize the revenues and fees for cities like Somerville. We take pride in how we construct and design our facilities. On the left is what we took over, on the right is what exists today, and we have great architects, great design people, and we are not shy about budgeting the appropriate dollars to make these places fit into the neighborhood and improve the appearance over time. The plan here is to convert the garage, which is located on the exact same property. You can sort of see it in the back left there. We'll take you through some more detail into an expanded dispensary so that we do not experience problems with lines or service levels. And we'll have some space on the second floor of the building, which today only half of which is built out. We'll finish that off so we can have some more workspace for managers. The renovation will not reduce the availability of our existing on-site parking. I know there was a request of the staff to maybe allocate one more space to bicycle parking, which obviously we're absolutely willing to consider and to do. We'll implement, and again, this was in the recommendation from the staff, an appointment-based system. I think that's wise early on to make sure that we understand what the demand is and that we do not create any unforeseen problems or issues with traffic in parking. And this is relatively easy to do and solves any of those problems. And we look forward to implementing that and then over time reducing the amount of turnaround time on those appointments so we can increase the business and the revenues for the city. What will be different at Rev Clinics? Not much, except for incrementally more traffic and people, obviously. Adults 21 plus, as you know, can enter the store, whereas today our patients need a medical card issued by the state. The products are very similar. Medical products can be higher dosed than adult use products, but same basic ingredients. The property appearance won't change much. In fact, I think it will be nicely improved, as Bruce Hampton will share with you. And obviously no consumption on the property, the same security. And we had planned on separating the sales stations for medical and adult use so we do not inconvenience our medical patients, which I think is important in this regard. I'll turn it over to Stephen to talk a little bit about the transportation impact study summary. Stephen, if you would. Do we have Stephen?
Hi, this is Rebecca speaking. I'm just having a little bit of problem with the technology. Hang on one second.
Okay.
I believe you're unmuted, Mr. Siragusa.
All right, can everybody hear me?
There we go.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Keith. So good evening. My name is Steven Siragusa. I'm with Design Consultants located at 120 Middlesex Ave here in Somerville. So as Keith was saying, so we prepared a transportation impact study and the transportation access plan for this site, which is in compliance with the City of Somerville standards and submittal requirements for all adult use dispensaries. And as with every traffic study that we do, we work directly with the mobility division, which we think is hugely important. So we get the scope, the data collection, and the trip generation. Everything is approved through them. So it's a really good process in that regard. Going through some of the findings and the summary of the transportation impact study. So we analyzed the two intersections that you see there, which is Broadway at Franklin Street and Broadway at Mount Vernon and Lombardy Street, which again, the mobility department asked us to do. We used data from 2019 because given that this was earlier in the year when we submitted this study, traffic was still kind of getting back to normal. So we used data from 2019 and we took data at the site driveway. We hand collected that as well so that we were able to include all the existing trips that are there for the medical side. So we included those in our analysis. As per the mobility conditions from the staff memo, we're also going to be collecting additional traffic data sometime soon, likely in early September, maybe even before that, so that we get a better idea of what the existing conditions are like out there and doing a little more analyses, just so we can truly understand what is going on and how much traffic there really is. In terms of trip generation, so there will be 0 weekday AM peak hour vehicle trips by customers, as the site will not be opening until after the peak hour. So I think that's hugely important during the morning rush hour. And there will be 34 weekday PM peak hour vehicle trips. So that's any hour between 4:30 and 6:30 PM. So you'll have 17 entering vehicle trips, 17 exiting. Which is approximately 0.1% of all the existing traffic that's on Broadway at the moment. So a very, very minimal amount. Next slide, Keith, please. And so we think this is probably the most important aspect of these studies is the transportation demand management. So as part of these reports and as part of the site, the Rev Clinics team is going to provide subsidized MBTA rapid transit and surface bus passes to all its employees, providing subsidized Blue Bike memberships to all its employees. And as Keith had mentioned and pointed out, preference is going to be given to residents of Somerville, which will reduce any vehicle trips to and from the site. Again, they're going to provide some long-term bicycle parking spaces on site for employees. And I think a big thing, as Keith had mentioned earlier, is that they're willing to give up a parking space, a vehicle parking space, and provide additional short-term bicycle parking spaces, which I know was in the staff memo that Mobility had requested. And I think it's a great idea that, we're going to be encouraging not only employees to frequent the site on bicycles, but customers as well. And also posting information on the website, MBTA maps and schedules and Blue Bike information and real-time transit displays, so that we're really encouraging non-vehicular trips to and from the site. I'll turn it back over to Keith. Again, if you guys have any questions, more than happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. So I'm going to ask if John Grennan could be unmuted from Lantel.
Good evening. Can you folks hear me? So good evening. My name is John Grennan. I do know some of you as a contractor in Somerville. I'm with Lantel Communications. We are the security provider for the city of Somerville. So very familiar with the city and the police department, traffic and parking, city hall, school departments. And I'm very proud to say that we've been affiliated with Revolutionary Clinics now. I can't even tell you how long it's been. It goes back to Matt McLaughlin and the public meetings that we had down the street at the Mount Vernon. So it's been a wonderful relationship with these folks where we have seen this building go from what it was in the spine clinic to what it is today. So as far as knowledge of the facility, knowledge of the neighborhood, very much on top of it and have been since we were knocking on doors on Pennsylvania or Austin or Benedict when it started. The security system for this building is really going to be an extension of the security system that they have had for their medicinal operation, which I guess you would refer to as the front of the building. And it far exceeds the CCC, the Cannabis Control Commission standards. It will be, I feel pretty confident in saying it'll be the safest building in Somerville as far as it will have more cameras, more access control, and more intrusion than the banks do in Somerville and the pharmacies do in Somerville. It's every inch is covered. That's all I can say. I will say this as somebody who's been working in Somerville for a very, very long time, especially with the police department, but with city government through at least 2 administrations. These folks have a commitment to security. So we've had no violations, we've had no issues. We've extended ourselves with Rev Clinics, and I am so very happy that we did it. They've been a good partner in the city. They run a safe facility and they spare no expense. They probably, Keith Cooper will probably tell you that I cost too much, but they have spared no expense to make sure that their staff and their visitors are safe, that their processes such as cash handling and inventory security are really flawless. In the state of Massachusetts, I think would agree with that. And their restricted and limited access areas are as secure as the cell block at the Somerville Police Station. There's really not much more I can say about security. I will add this though, that the neighborhood has been as important to Keith and his team as the facility that we're talking about tonight has. It's that simple. So they're very concerned about impact in the community. They're concerned about criminality, and there has been next to none in that neighborhood. I mean, Ward 1's a success as it is, and we love Ward 1, but it's just been a good relationship. What I'll say to you, getting into the weeds on the security, exceeds the CCC standards, state-of-the-art security, access control, video, monitored at 2 different locations, to 2 different alarm venues in accordance with the CCC. Regular inspections are done by Lantel on a quarterly basis. Their security director or vice president of compliance is probably one of the biggest pros I've worked with in this business. And I'll finish by saying this. We have been asked by several cannabis customers and potential cannabis customers in Somerville to handle their security. And this is the only one we do. We've turned the rest of them down. So this is, I just can't say enough about these folks or the security that they've put in place. If you have specific questions about the security, we can certainly answer those, but this will continue to be not only the most secure building in Ward 1, but it'll be the most secure building north of the Federal Reserve Bank in Boston.
Thank you very much, John. In the presentation that I forwarded to Charlotte, and I'm happy to forward it to anybody else, Lantel's detailed plan for both what exists today in the medical facility as well as what will be in the adult use portion of the facility is detailed here. And again, if anybody has any questions or comments relative to that, either tonight or in the future, just let us know.
I'd like to add, if I could add one thing, there's always a concern about, there's always a Fourth Amendment concern when we talk about surveillance or we talk about cameras and intrusion in the community. This is a very social justice conscious company, and I'd like to think that Lantel is also. And I can tell you that the cameras that we have had in place, we've gone to painstaking lengths with the residents on Pennsylvania to make sure that we're not capturing yards and windows and private property and motor vehicles when they're getting in and out and they're taking their groceries out. You know, we take, I'm a big fan of the ACLU. You know, it probably doesn't sound like a camera guy to you, but we take that very, very seriously, and this customer is taking this very seriously also. So their footprint that they have, while it's extraordinary when it comes to security, it is always it's very Fourth Amendment sensible for the neighborhood, and I'm very proud to say that that was one of Keith Cooper's priorities, and we've been able to help him with that. It's pretty neat. So this comes from somebody that does the Department of Corrections in Massachusetts, which is the exact opposite of that. So I greatly enjoy doing jobs like this. So the print that you see in front of you that Keith has referenced, which is the primary security system design, kind of illustrates that the level of security and the level of acuity on both the rear and the forward portions of the property, recreational versus medicinal, are equal, and that there's no shortcomings there.
Thank you very much, John. I'm going to ask Bruce Hampton from Place Taylor Hampton to come on and describe the changes in the property and the architectural design.
Mr. Chair, this is Rebecca speaking. Sorry, Mr. Hampton, you are self-muted still? Okay, there you go.
There we go. Good evening. I'm Bruce Hampton. I'm one of the principals at Place Taylor Elton Hampton Architects. I have had the pleasure of working on somewhere around 30 dispensaries around the country, many in Massachusetts, New York, Delaware, Florida. And working with Revolutionary is a real pleasure. So I thank everybody for the opportunity to present. This is a small job, but it's an important job for us. We are taking the existing garage. Keith, I think there is a slide that's just slightly out of order, but we have a picture of both the existing garage and the new garage. Is it the next slide? No.
No, I don't think so, Bruce. This
We
is all.
skipped. We're missing a number of slides then.
My apologies.
So I will speak to the slides that we have. We did present to the UDC. We had a great couple of sessions with the UDC, and they were very helpful in reorienting some of our thinking about the design of this garage. As you can see, the garage, more or less the middle upper portion of the page, it was a 5-car, 5-bay garage. What wasn't mentioned, I don't think, is before the chiropractor's occupation there, I believe this goes back historically, was a funeral parlor. And so the bays of this garage were very important for the operation there. Surprisingly, it's not a very big garage. It's not very deep. I'm sure the hearses were probably not stretch Cadillacs back then. But we have decided to renovate, rehab this garage to make it a retail space for Revolutionary. The basic changes that came about from the UDC were that we improved some plantings around the site, which I'll get to in the next slide. And we reoriented this center entry of the garage, which has a nice little pediment above the garage. And so that's become our new entry into the adult use area. Again, the UDC in their review for us did not deal with the signage, but fortunately staff jumped in, planning board staff jumped in and helped us with the zoning ordinance. We already have, as you saw in some of the earlier slides, signage on the front and on the leading edge on the right side of the upper elevation drawing. You can see the Revolutionary Clinics signage applied directly to the building. So what we were allowed to do under the current zoning is a blade sign, and we're indicating the blade sign dead center of that new entryway. And in the lower right, you can see the rear view of the facility, and the blade sign is blown up just above the elevation, over to the right here, over to the right. There you go, right there, thank you. So it's a simple blade sign, 11 inches high, 3 feet long, and we will light it appropriately at night. The basic floor plan is very simple. It's a secure entry. It's a sales floor and vault area. And the only reason why I believe are seeking site plan approval is the fact that we extended the area, and whoever's got the cursor, Keith, do you have the cursor? Can you point at the bike storage over on the plan to the left? left. Yeah, the bike storage. So we bumped out a small portion of the garage right there. We took that last bay and created some indoor bike storage there and an unloading zone for product. And that's the basic change in the site plan. And that being said, I think briefness is probably good. We'll entertain questions, I think, from the, let's flip, I'm sorry, one more slide. Thank you. So the site plan is virtually unchanged from today. The only thing that we've changed, as I said, is the entry to the new retail area. And we've defined that entry with some scored concrete paving. The couple of handicap spots, number 12 and 13, have moved to the north. And in front of all of those spots, we are putting bollards to protect the glass from an accident. There's some minor additions to the north along the fence line. We're planting some new cedars to help improve the privacy to the neighbor right there. Thank you. And we also promised at UDC that we would spend some time on the landscaping down next to parking space number 1, which didn't take very well when the original landscaping. So it needs some tender loving care. That's really the change on the site. And with that, I'll hand it back to Keith and the rest of you.
I think that that does it for our formal presentation. Thank you for your time, and the team is here to answer questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. I actually do have a couple of questions, but before I ask my questions and open it up for public testimony and to the rest of the board, I think staff wanted to address a few issues that were attended to the staff memorandum and issues related to that. So I'd ask Charlotte to update us on an issue or multiple.
Thank you, Chair Capuano. So as I was listening to the presentation, one question that I just had that I would ask the applicant to expand on is the ordinance requires that for any use that has 50 or more employees, a mobility management plan is required as part of a complete application. And I know we had discussed this earlier on, and it had sounded like there were a total of 33 employees, but this presentation indicated that there would be 50, and I just would like you to address that so that we make sure that you have all of the information that you need to give the board as part of this application.
Yeah. Are you talking about at one time, Charlotte, or throughout the day?
So the ordinance just says 50 employees, so I would take that as total employees, not at any one time, but total employees.
And Jess Coombs Bailey, who's our Vice President of Retail, I believe should be on the phone. If she is, if she could be unmuted, she can share the staffing plan.
Mr. Chair, this is Rebecca speaking. What was your?
Yeah, Jessica.
Jessica Bailey?
Yes.
Okay.
Or Jen Palladino. I think both of them are on, and Jen is the area manager.
Both are unmuted.
Okay. So Jen and Jess, did you hear the question about the total number of employees that you anticipate at this location, both med and recreational? Don't hear anything, Jess or Jen.
This is Rebecca speaking again. Both lines are unmuted and showing green, so They should be able to speak.
I don't know why. Let me see if I can get Jen.
I'm trying to do some tech support here.
This is Charlotte speaking. At ZBA meetings, sometimes applicants will have trouble with the computer audio and have found success if they switch their audio over to the phone call option. So Jessica and Jen, you may wish to try that and that may solve the problem.
Yeah, she said she got bumped off trying to get off mute and she's getting back in. Okay.
This is Rebecca speaking again. There's 3 versions of her account, of Jessica Bailey's account at the moment. So I'm going to, and all of them say offline. So I'm going to dismiss those 3 so that you can call back in on a new line. Okay, Ms. Bailey, you should be unmuted.
Hi there. Sorry about the interruption. I appreciate the question. We have 18 team members currently on staff in the dispensary on the medical side, and our plan is to bring between 15 and 20 additional staff members to the team.
Okay, thank you. I will note for the applicant that if at any point you do have 50 or more employees, just be aware of the mobility management plan requirements, as those can kick in as soon as you have 50 employees, even if you are not actively seeking a special permit. But that answers my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Charlotte, and thank you to the team for answering that question. I saw in the staff memorandum an issue related to the proposed privacy glass, and I know we have occasionally had an issue with the type of window display glass and shielding with other stores that sell cannabis, both in retail and medically. And I'm wondering if staff could address what the concern is, and if because the memorandum suggested that the applicant will be able to give you all a sample of the material before you signed off. Is that usually something that we delegate to staff? Because we've asked for samples and visual representations of what it would be with other applicants in a similar position.
So I'm happy to answer that. Wow, I'm really blanking on your name, Keith. If you could scroll to the visual of the floor plan, that would be helpful. Thank you. So the reason that I bring this up in the staff memo is that if you see, like, on kind of the upper side of the floor plan, there is just solid glass that views directly onto the sales floor. That glass will need to comply with the zoning ordinance's minimum visible light transmittance and minimum visible or maximum visible light reflectance requirements. And those requirements are set so that my understanding is it's fairly easy to see through glass, but that can come in conflict with the Cannabis Control Commission's requirements about visibility of products in the stores. So while it is not staff's role in the slightest to enforce Cannabis Control Commission requirements, we do, when we notice things, try to point them out just as flags for the applicants to consider. It is fairly typical for, maybe less typical in cannabis, in instances of cannabis, because it is, it can be a sticking point. But with other projects, it is very standard for applicants to not know the specific VLT and VLR requirements for their glass at this point in the process. And so we impose a condition requiring that those material specifications be reviewed and approved prior to the building permit. But because in instances of cannabis, it is not just as simple as, well, the glass is clear and complies and we're all set to go. I did want to mention it in the staff memo.
Yeah, and that's why I was asking, because I do remember when we've had other cannabis-related applicants that the shielding and the mirrored aspects of glass is usually something that's discussed by members of the board, and I just don't remember if we delegated that to you on a regular basis. And it sounds like the answer is yes, which is fine. I'm not really an expert on the proper type of glass, which is why we have you all. And so that was one question. The other question I had is to both the applicant and to staff. In the presentation that you made, you indicated that you were going, because you were adding a retail use and taking away a parking space and adding a bike spot in order to reduce kind of lines out the door and the whole thing, that you would be implementing a reservation system, which is something that we've regularly included as a condition. But I think you included that it would be done until you figured out if you still needed it. And as I remember our conditions on other cannabis retail applications, we have kind of imposed a permanent condition for reservation systems. And I'm wondering if this would be a deviation from our standard conditions as it relates to the reservation systems and the duration of them.
I am happy to answer that, and then I will hand it off to the applicant for the second half. The recommended conditions from staff are the standard conditions that we have tended to impose on most, if not all, new retail uses. The applicant has brought up over email earlier today a question of whether appointment only would apply to both the medical and the recreational uses, or to just the recreational. As currently written, I would suspect that ISD will interpret it as applying to both. The board can certainly, with very easy tweaks, adjust that condition to just apply to the new recreational that is being added to this use. Staff would not have any problem with that, but as currently written, it would apply to both medical and recreational. The existing medical and the proposed new recreational.
If you do anything else, it's going to be difficult. You're going to deal with him arguing. So yeah.
Sorry, this is Keith Cooper. I don't know who that is speaking. Our strong preference would be to keep the medical facility as a walk-in and a pre-order facility to accommodate our patients who have been coming to the store for 4 years. And because it's in an entirely different part of the facility, that wouldn't change the experience that they have had and the experience we've had to date. So I would strongly hope that we could not inconvenience those patients, some of whom are disabled and really need that flexibility. I would also state that for the benefit of all, as it relates to the appointment only scheduling, that the way that it can work is you can have a certain amount of time between appointments, and that initial design can be something like 10 minutes. We have 5 POS stations, I believe, and so that's 6 people per hour per POS station, or 30 people at peak maximum. At some point in time, if we're not hitting that peak and there aren't issues for traffic and parking, it would be in everybody's best interest to reduce that appointment time to then 8 minutes. And increase the capacity, increase the revenue, increase the tax dollars and fees that the city gets. I don't know the process that you would like to go through to get quote unquote approval for that, but I believe there should be some time frame that we all look at it together again to try to maximize the value and the benefit to everybody.
Yeah, I would imagine, and maybe the board and staff could weigh in on this as well. What I had in mind, if you wanted some sort of a phase out or a modification of the reservation program, that you would come before the board for a modification of the condition with some, documentation saying we've got fewer people than we thought, or we've got more people than we thought, and we've added registers. We've, there have been some change in circumstances that we think would justify a modification of the condition. I mean, maybe we can write in as part of the condition that, in 12 months you come back and do a, progress report and see if it's something that you'd like to do to see if we can change the modification. But I don't think changing the reservation system for the retail is something that I don't want to give up the board's authority to be able to modify that condition based on, us not having the evidence that we would need to do that, a change in traffic circumstances, a change in, customer volume and things like that. So did you want to address us, Charlotte?
If I may. So as currently written, the two conditions that kind of work hand in hand are, number one, retail sales to walk-in customers are prohibited. Customer visits must be by appointment only. And then number two, any change to the means of sales requires a new transportation impact and access study. The scope of the TIS must be approved by the Director of Mobility. So those two conditions work together so that if at any point in the future, Revolutionary Clinics or any of the other applicants that have had this condition imposed want to change from appointment only to walk-in, they could request that 2 weeks after getting the special permit. They could request that 2 years after getting that special permit. They would just need to satisfy the requirement of having a transportation impact and access study approved by the Director of Mobility so that the board can make any relevant findings regarding the proposal's impact on transportation networks in the surrounding area.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because that's traditionally what we have done for these. But the presentation, there was a text box that that didn't say that, or at least it wasn't interpreted to say that. It was more of a, if demand changes, we will just not have a reservation anymore. And I wanted to make sure that was not the case, that it still had to go through the usual protocols that we impose on the reservation systems that we've done in the past.
Yeah, I think that's very reasonable to a very reasonable process. So we're fine with that as an applicant. I would ask though that if sort of as part of this process, the medical portion of the business got changed to appointment only, that would be a big disruption.
Yeah, I don't have an inclination to ask you to put a reservation system on the medical side, particularly where you haven't had one already.
Thank you. So I think that's great. I think there was the window question still that was outstanding. Bruce Hampton.
The window question, I think, to save you guys some time, I think has been, at least my concerns, I think have been resolved by the comments. But if you guys want to address that any further,
we'll work with staff on that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if any other members of the board have comments or questions at this time. Debbie, did you say yes?
Yes, I had two questions. One is for the gentleman that talked about the traffic impact studies. And I know the request was made to do additional studies, which it sounds like that may happen in September or even sooner. And I was curious to hear, given that, some companies that have allowed folks to work remote are not having people back until, some not even until the end of the year. How much of an accurate picture you think we'll be getting with traffic studies that are done in the next few months while we're still kind of in the throes of the pandemic and, we're not back to normality in terms of traffic flow.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Steve Saragusa at Design Consultants. That's a great question. That's a question that is not just specific to this board. It's been asked all around the country, and what's happening with traffic and commuting patterns and everything like that. I think the more I think about it, there's no telling when traffic is going to return to 100% pre-pandemic. All the estimates that have come out is we're somewhere around 80 to 85% pre-pandemic levels of traffic right now. Maybe that's not so specific to Somerville, but definitely specific to the Boston area. So I think, although there are employers that are not mandating people come back into the office until the end of the year or 2022 even, I think we'll get a pretty good snapshot of what's actually out there at the moment. And again, as you had mentioned, there's really no telling when everything is going to be going back to quote unquote normal. So it's tough to kind of wait around for that to happen because we don't know if and when it will happen. So I think, collecting data when schools are back in session, I know a lot of the area schools are going to be back. So I think we'll get a pretty good representation of what commuting is like come September.
Great. And the other question I have, I guess still sort of related to traffic, but with the addition potentially of marijuana delivery, would that be emanating from this facility, or is there sort of a central location where those, I'm not sure how it entirely works, if the trucks sort of pick up and then do the delivery, but just curious about what might be happening here and whether that's been considered in terms of traffic flow and the parking spaces and whatnot.
So this is Keith. Adult use delivery is only permitted with a new host community agreements and special permit. We're not requesting that today. It's also, you may or may not know, would have to be in partnership with an equity licensee for a number of years. As part of the medical program, we have the ability to deliver to those people, many of whom can't leave their homes. And so there is a delivery option for people. Not a lot of people take advantage of it, but some people do, and it's a great convenience for them. And we've been doing that for about a year and a half now out of our facilities.
Great, thank you.
Did anybody else on the board have any questions or issues that they wanted to raise? Yes, Aaron.
Yeah, so I had maybe some questions around the lighting plan. In the staff memo, there's a proposed condition around a lighting plan that complies with section 10.7 as a condition for site plan approval. My question was, how much lighting change is there going to be with the new adult use section in the back of the building? Reason being is that's the part of the building that's most proximal to the neighborhood behind it. And really just kind of curious about how you guys are thinking about that lighting plan and minimizing sort of nighttime or just like urban sort of light pollution at night.
I think I can speak to this. Bruce Hampton again, the architect. The only change on the site from the existing condition today is the addition of a small light to illuminate the blade sign that is going over the center door. And that will only be coming on at dusk, 30 minutes before dusk, and then going off at closing time. So there shouldn't be any spillage to the neighborhood.
Okay. So everything else is just sort of replace existing.
Exactly right.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else right now? Okay, what I'd like to do, I have no idea if there's anybody who is listed as an attendee that is not affiliated with the applicant of the application, but I do want at this time to open up the hearing for public testimony. And I would like to invite anyone that wants to provide testimony to click the raise hand button and I'll call on you. Oftentimes we'll put in a 2-minute timer, but I, don't abuse the time. I won't do it tonight. So anybody who wants to speak, please click the raised hand button and I'll call on you. Going once, going twice. Seeing none, I'm going to close that portion of the public hearing. Okay, so my fellow members have asked some questions. We've had a great presentation by the applicant in kind of going over the various aspects of the application. And I have in front of me the staff memorandum that incorporates a number of suggested conditions that we've discussed. So what I'd like to do is, we've seen the considerations that are in the staff memorandum and we've discussed them. We have talked about the various conditions that the staff has recommended that we include, and we've talked about how those conditions can reflect our own concerns and issues that we've raised tonight. So I don't know if anybody has any further conditions that they'd like to suggest that we include. Yeah.
Per the discussion earlier about the appointment system, I would think it might be wise to make the reservation condition very explicit for the adult use and not affecting the existing medical use.
I agree, and I would ask staff to clarify that in the condition that just adds a sentence that says precisely that the implementation of the reservation system will apply only to the adult use retail section of the facility and not the medical use aspect of the facility. Anybody else have any other proposed conditions that they'd like to include? No. Okay. Then in that case, following public testimony, review of the submitted materials and deliberation of the required considerations outlined by the zoning ordinance, I move to approve with conditions as amended the application for site plan approval for modifying a commercial building. Seconded by Amelia. Roll call vote. The chair votes aye.
Mr. Chair, this is Rebecca speaking. Can I pause you for just a moment? Attorney Figueredo has had her hand raised.
I apologize.
Yeah.
I didn't want to unmute myself. I wanted to raise my hand first. I apologize. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, there is a condition where the applicant has to pay $15,000 towards traffic issues and so forth. I mean, when we had a meeting the other day after reviewing the staff report, it seemed quite steep. And, you know, I've done a few of these, as you know, before this board, and I haven't seen a condition quite like that. So I don't know if there's any, I mean, obviously, the applicant, of course, wants to be a good neighbor. They work well with the city. They've been in the city since, you know, open since 2017, but I don't know if that number could be reduced in some fashion.
Could I ask staff to address that, if there's a reason that we are doing this, if this is a deviation from our usual practice or not, and to address Attorney Vigorito's question?
I am happy to address that. So in reviewing the transportation impact study, Mobility Division noticed that, I'm forgetting which street it is exactly. I think it is Broadway and Lombardy, but that there were notable decreases in the level of service at some of the intersections in the transportation impact study, and so recommended a condition that the applicant mitigate that. The Mobility Division's recommended condition does say $15,000, but that condition has not been attached, or that condition has not been recommended for the permits. The recommended condition for the permits that addresses Mobility's concerns, because there's Mobility Division will recommend conditions to the board and to planning staff, and planning staff will kind of take those conditions and interpret them so that they satisfy the concerns of the Mobility Division, but also are more enforceable. So the relevant condition is to mitigate transportation impacts, the signal timing and pavement markings of the impacted intersections must be improved as required by the Director of Mobility. Final mitigation or its substantial equivalent must be approved by the relevant city departments. So final mitigation is not a specific number or specific thing. It is a requirement that the applicant work with the Mobility Division and any other relevant departments to address the specific concerns of impacted intersections that the Mobility Division saw as a result of the transportation impact study.
Thank you. I'm glad you addressed that, because I hadn't seen those in the proposed conditions, that figure, and I was wondering where it came from, because I didn't think it was a proposed condition suggested by staff. Jahan, I think, has a question on a condition, so if you want to ask that before we take a continuation of this vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is really seeking a clarification of a condition. This relates to the permit conditions mobility, the sixth bullet on page 7, and it reads, Revolutionary Clinic shall provide discounts or other incentives to customers who take non-vehicular or public transportation modes to this site. I'm just trying to seek some additional clarification from staff in terms of what sort of expectations there are around this condition, whether they're designed to essentially reduce the vehicular traffic, and if so, how has that basically what are we seeking for with respect to seeking incentives or asking Revolutionary Clinics to provide these incentives?
I'm happy to answer that. So that condition really gets at, as with many, if not all of the other conditions from the mobility or recommended by the Mobility Division, it gets at reducing the mode share of customers and encouraging in an abundant number of ways, encouraging public transportation, biking, walking, non-private vehicular modes of transit. So off the top of my head, an example of an incentive could be you get earlier access to appointment slots. There's no specific requirement about what types of incentives are provided. The discounts is one example incentive that could be provided, but it is the purpose of the condition is to encourage customers to use non-private motor vehicle forms of transit and does not specifically require any specific incentives, just encouraging customers to use public transit, biking, walking.
Thank you, Charlotte, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that satisfies my concern.
I actually see Mr. Siragusa's hand raised. I don't know if if you want to address one of the questions that Jahan had or whatever, but if you could unmute Mr. Siragusa for the purpose of him giving us an answer or something.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you.
Mr. Chair, this is Rebecca
Oh,
speaking. He is unmuted, sorry.
No, no worries. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to go back to, if I may, go back to the condition about the mitigating the transportation impacts. I was a little slow in the raising the hand, so I apologize. So I understood what was said about it not being a specific number. This is the first time that I've come across this condition. I've done, as most of you know, I've done the traffic study for a number of these sites in the city. And we've come across the same thing where some of the level of service has declined after adding the site-specific project trips. And none of those sites were given this condition. I'm not going to name specifics of what sites those were, but this is the first time that this has been kind of implemented by Mobility or suggested by Mobility. And to be completely honest, you know, it really was a degradation of about 0.5 seconds of delay per vehicle. It just so happened that it crossed over that threshold of level of service. So that increase is very minimal and will not be noticed within Somerville or any of the surrounding areas. It is the Lombardi Street approach, to clarify, and is the left turn at Lombardi Street. So all of those vehicles that are actually going to Sullivan Square, that is the one movement that goes from a level of service C to a level of service D. And again, it's going to be minuscule. So I just wanted to point that out, that this is the first time that I've come across this condition, where in the past we've also had declining levels of service for other traffic studies we've done for adult use dispensaries. And I just wanted to give some credence to that. So thank you.
Wondering if staff could address the issue that Steve just raised about this being the first time that it's been implemented. I don't believe that's true, but if you could educate me.
I would have to, with all of the cases I have, some of them tend to blend together. So I'd actually want to go back and look at the other cases to confirm that rather than speculating. What I will say is that we very much defer to Mobility to review the transportation impact studies, as we have mobility specific planners who that is their entire job, is to think, talk, and work on transportation issues. So I am happy to ask the Mobility Division the reasoning behind this, but I would not speculate at this time on whether this is the only proposal or whether this is the only project to have a condition of this type or not, or the reasoning behind why Mobility imposed it on this particular project. But I'm happy to get some more information from the Mobility Division if you would appreciate that.
I guess I'm gonna ask the applicant if you want us to look into, because we're not going to take a vote on conditions that we don't, you know, that you won't agree to abide by. And if this is a particular condition that we need clarification as to why it was imposed, with your comments now being on the record, we can hold off a vote until another day, so that your concerns about this condition can be addressed by Mobility if you want.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll pass and just put it in there.
Okay. Does anybody else got any comments or questions before we continue with the vote? Okay. Seeing none, I had moved to approve with conditions the the application for site plan approval for modifying a commercial building. The conditions having been proposed amended by Aaron, seconded by Amelia. And so roll call vote on that. The chair votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
Aaron votes aye.
Debbie votes aye.
Okay, you have a unanimous vote. And following public testimony, review of the submitted materials and deliberation of the required considerations outlined by the zoning ordinance, I move to approve with conditions as amended, the special permit to establish a cannabis retail sales use, seconded by Amelia. Roll call vote. The chair votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
Aaron votes aye.
Debbie votes aye.
Congratulations to the applicant. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you very much and have a great evening.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's no other business before the planning board tonight unless somebody wants to raise anything and keep us from dinner. Seeing none, the chair moves to adjourn, seconded by Amelia. Roll call vote. Chair votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
Aaron votes aye.
And Debbie votes aye.
Wonderful. Thank you all very much. And I likely won't see you on the 19th, but we will have a meeting and I'll see you likely sometime thereafter. Have a good night.
Good night.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.